I want to tell you guys that I know how stressful this can be, and I also know how awesome it can be. Having babies is wonderful, and then they get older and life gets going and things are expensive, and it's okay. Like, it's okay that we need to utilize some of these things, and it's okay to work with ourselves to figure out what is going to be best. But I want you guys to know that you are great parents. You are a good mom right where you're at. The fact that we worry so much about these things is what tells us that we are kind of doing the right thing, that we care enough, that we want to make sure that we've got our babies in good hands.
Getting pregnant and giving birth are two of the most exciting things you can ever hope to experience in this life. The moment you think you could be pregnant, you're frantically searching for all the best information, which is why you're here today. I'm Stephanie King, and with my many years of experience as a professional childbirth educator, doula, and lover of all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, I'm here to make preparing for your birth enjoyable, empowering, and totally easy. Each week, I'll cover different topics, interview professionals, and get into the nitty-gritty birth stories from mamas just like you. And when you're ready for more, you can join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I take you step by step through exactly how to prepare your mind, body, spirit, and partner for a birth you love. So let's get started.
This week's reviewer of the week is McCraggle, and she says, amazing and powerful podcast. I started listening to the podcast around 34 weeks into my second pregnancy. I wish I would have found this podcast my first pregnancy, and maybe things would have been a little bit different. I was worried I wouldn't be able to hear all the important details I needed since I joined later in my pregnancy, but boy, was I wrong. I ended up listening to the podcast and finished about 95% of the My Essential Birth course with my husband. I felt so much more empowered that my body could do all of this on its own with the help of the techniques given by Stephanie and Courtney, and with the help of my amazing husband. I was able to have an amazing unmedicated birth I didn't think I was even capable of doing. It's truly an amazing podcast, and I would recommend to anyone having a baby to listen, even if you're like me and not experiencing your first birth. I also loved hearing their unbiased and differing opinions and options on things. They truly just want you to have all the information to make the choice for you and your baby. Thanks, Stephanie and Courtney, for all your help. Love, Michaela C. Thank you, Michaela. So glad that you are listening, and I can tell you've been listening from the beginning, because for those of you who have been here for a while, Courtney is not here consistently anymore, but all of that holds true. Everything that she's talking about, everything that you're hearing, and the fact that we were able to go on things kind of back and forth. I love to bring in all the different opinions or different angles that you guys can look at stuff from, because it gives you an option to really decide for yourself what is best for you. And we are not all made the same, and it is okay that we have these differing opinions. It's all about getting the information that's going to work for you and your family. So that is what we are here to do. And that actually kind of goes perfectly with today and what we're talking about, which is all about finding the right childcare provider for your baby postpartum, if this is something that you choose to do. And this question actually came it was spurred off of a question that came in our private Facebook group. And I'm not going to call her out, but she said, she's a stay-at-home mom, and she has her child of 2 years old, and she's considering some part-time childcare. And so she was asking in the group, she's like, I've interviewed a couple of people. Nothing has felt quite right. She's been looking for quite some time. And she's like, help me out. What do I need to ask? Help me make a list of questions that she can ask possible care providers. She's like, I'm a first-time mom. I'm really picky. Like, what do I need to do? And I felt like that was such a good place for me to say, hey, I know you are not the only mom dealing with this, so let's talk about it on a bigger scale. The responses that she got in the group were just killer. And so I'm going to include some of those ideas and stuff here. So you guys will get the best of both worlds for sure. And obviously, moms that are in the My Essential Birth group, you guys get to see all the details on the back end as well. So that's awesome. But I think it just kind of holds true that, like, choosing, when we decide we want childcare for our child, choosing a proper provider is super important. And it's also something we're probably going to go back and forth on and try to figure out the very best thing for our baby. So if you've been here for a while, and this is where this mom went totally right, you know how I feel and how big I am on interviewing providers. You have to find a good one, period, right? And that goes for pregnancy, that goes for your postpartum. I mean, everything that we do, and certainly with our children, that's going to include our pediatricians, and it's also going to include anybody that's going to have time with our baby, like childcare. So what I absolutely love is she's like, I have interviewed all these providers. It didn't feel right yet. So then there was just no question about it. Like, we're just not doing it yet, right? So you have to interview. It cannot just be the cheapest option, the closest option, the most convenient option necessarily, which I know can be a little irritating. And I know that you guys know that. So with that, let's kind of go into some things we're going to talk about today. Now, I want you guys to all know too, there is a free downloadable PDF that we are including with this episode. It's all of the questions that we're going to talk about here today, which I'll get to at the end of the episode. I'm going to give you some really solid questions that you can ask when you are looking for childcare providers, either that you can ask them or kind of ask yourself. So all of those questions available for download, plus more in that PDF, and that'll be available in the show notes. So if you haven't had a chance to grab that, go grab that. If you're on the email list, you'll get a link to that as well. Now let's go over, I thought we could start by kind of going over some reasons that we might need childcare, right? It's either like if you need or want to go back to work. Maybe you need some time just throughout the week for yourself. Maybe you're like, it is my safe and happy place to go grocery shopping, whatever you're going to do during the week for this scheduled amount of time, and budget your week or whatever it is. And you need a little bit of support that way. Could be something like that. If you are working from home, that's another reason that you might need childcare. Going to school, maybe you are furthering your education, learning a little bit more so that you have more to give. Definitely going to school is somewhere where you might need help there. And another one that holds true and dear to my heart is doula work. So if you find yourself a birth worker of some sort, then you definitely need to have some kind of backup plan once you have kids or once you have another kid, so that you can make sure to get the care that they need while you're doing what you love and how you can serve somebody else. So before we dive into all of that stuff though, I want to talk about some options other than childcare, because this is something that, again, near and dear to my heart. And why doula work and childbirth education kind of became a staple for me, other than the fact that I was totally obsessed with it and knew that I had to do something with it. But it was really helpful for our family financially as well. After a little bit, that passion started bringing in some money, which was really great. And it wasn't a ton, but it was definitely like, oh my gosh, I feel like we can breathe a little bit, or we can get the kids XYZ, or we can talk about sports or whatever it is, right? But options other than childcare. So this is just going to give you some ideas in case, and especially I'll get to that at the bottom here, but especially for the moms that are like, I'm doing this because I absolutely need to in this moment, but I don't want to. If you are a mom that's like, everything in me wants to be home with my baby, I want to go over a couple different options so that you don't feel so trapped. And even though you might feel that way in this moment, hopefully it can open up some ideas for you and give you some ideas so that maybe you have some other options, even if not right now, then maybe in the near future. But one of the things that we can do is change jobs. And again, so this is ideas that were in my head too. I'm also a busybody. I have to be doing something. As much as I love my children and I want to be home with them and I want to raise them, that is my truest desire. I also need something for myself. And when it brings in a little bit of money, that lights me up. So that is my I have to be doing something for myself. I have to be serving other people in some way. And I would like to be supporting my family as well. So changing jobs, that was the first one that came to mind. Maybe you can, and this is not ideal, but if you're like, I want to be home with my baby and I don't want anybody else with my baby, I want it to be me and my husband or whatever the case, working opposite hours from your spouse. So again, not ideal because you need to obviously prioritize your time with your family, all parts of your family, including your spouse. But is this something that you could do in the meantime if you're like, I'm really not comfortable with somebody else having my baby? And that can be for sure a postpartum, I want to say comfort, but almost like a necessity for mom. If you are not comfortable, if that, hinges on some anxiety or just some other issues that you might have, for example, I can relate to that. I was really uncomfortable having my baby with anybody else. The only person or people I trusted my baby with in the very beginning was my husband's parents, and where I was like, okay, I can hand you this child and I trust that this baby is going to be okay for a little bit of time. I didn't like leaving him. It was some postpartum stuff. Wasn't comfortable. So that might be an option, working opposite hours from your spouse. Another thing is to find something with less hours, and that may mean less pay, but you could also find something less hours that pays a little bit more. That is an option. Finding something that allows you to work from home. So this is where my childbirth education stuff came in for me, for example, and that allowed me to work from home. So if you guys know a little bit of the story behind how I became a birth educator, I had this incredible birth, and then the very next, so that baby was born at the beginning of that year. And then the next year when we did our tax return, and at that time we got a little bit of money back for our tax return, my husband and I agreed that I would use that entire tax return to be able to become a childbirth educator. So that paid for the education. I had to fly somewhere, it paid for the hotel, all of that stuff. And then we ended up having to spend a little bit of money on top of that. And it was my time, obviously. But the great thing about teaching childbirth education was I could do it from home in the comfort of my home. I took my baby with me everywhere when I went to go talk about it, like when I went from birth center to birth center or a chiropractor's office or whatever. Like I took my baby everywhere with me. And then when I taught, I could nurse during class or whatever the case. Like I had my little kids, running around occasionally. Like it wasn't a big deal, and people are great. And it's even exciting for them to see like, oh my gosh, like this is the next stage for me. Childbirth education was really great. And that led into the doula stuff because you build these bonds with these incredible women who you are teaching about birth, and then you get to be in their birth space and it just grows from there. And it's really, really amazing. Baking, and I can say like, this was something that I did. I did this before childbirth education, right? Like I said, I wanted to bring in a little bit more money. I wanted to be doing something, and I was able to do it at home with my little kids. And so it was just like a Facebook marketplace kind of thing in the local community. And I was like, I'm baking brownies and I'm baking this, and like, we'll drop off at your house, and like, here's the prices. Wasn't a ton of money. I wasn't making a ton of money off of it, but it did bring in something. Now, I'll say that. And the woman that lives next door to me, literally was able to remain in their home because she does cake pops and they are crazy beautiful. Like she super got into it and has blown up. So there are on my small scale was making a couple $100 maybe every couple weeks. And on hers is, able to support her family. So that is something that you can get into and do from home. Tutoring other children. So if you're good at math or writing or whatever, and you can start in the elementary grades, you do not need to be incredibly smart to be able to, and I can tell you this because I homeschool my kids and I guess you have to see how they turn out. But when they are little, what they really need is time and attention and, all of that stuff. And so those kinds of things are easy, especially when they're little. Like maybe it's just really helping a little kid to read or something like that. And you're smarter than you think you are. Once you get into the heavier maths and stuff, you might have to reteach yourself just a touch, but there is time and place for that. Tutoring can be a thing, and maybe you're crazy smart and you have those degrees and all that kind of stuff, or degrees or not, you just get it, and you can help that way as well. Babysitting or becoming a childcare provider yourself, that is something that I super considered because I was like, if I can stay home with my kids and have other kids in this space, then that's a way for me to support my family and stay home. So that's something you can look into. There's also online jobs, and this, I guess, depends on how many kids you have and nap times and all that kind of stuff. But I know companies like JetBlue, you can log on and log off whenever you need, make a little bit of money while the baby's napping or whatever. And you can do customer service or whatever that way. Plus, I think there's also perks with jobs like that. So another one is virtual assistant. And my two ladies that work for me can tell you the benefits of virtual assisting and also raising babies, raising a family. We get together once a week and we talk for an hour where I see them online, and they're usually, we're all yelling at kids or, whatever. Somebody's nursing somebody or whatever the case. And it's wonderful. And then the rest of the time it's like, okay, work when the kids are napping or whatever. And there are a lot of positions like that available. So a virtual assistant is totally an option. Another thing is, like I had said before, finding something that you can bring your baby with you to. So I talked about childbirth education. You can also do like nannying jobs in somebody else's house. So maybe it's not your house, but you can go and nanny for another family and bring your baby with you. And there are many, many people that are totally fine with that, actually even prefer it. So that's something to look into. Cleaning and organization. This can be a great one. You can do it. We did this as well when I had my new little babe. And I did stop working at my 40-hour-a-week job that I was doing towards the end of that pregnancy. But I did come back every week after that so that I could clean the office on Fridays. And they were really great about that. So again, and my husband would come with me, my husband and my baby, and we'd like knock it out in a couple hours. So there are things that you can do that way. Teaching exercise classes, that's another one, depending on what the class is and where it is and all that kind of stuff. You can bring your baby with you. Sometimes it's an exercise class where everybody brings their babies with them and you guys can do something that way. So it'll lean a little bit on your passion and desires and availability and all that stuff. Another one was finding creative ways to save money. I got fairly good at this as well. I will be 100% honest. Budgeting for like groceries and stuff, it stresses me out every single time. I feel like I'm not good at it. I have been working at it for a good 16 years now. As much as I want to say like, I have got this down to a T, I never do. And I almost always go over budget. And it's not even because we splurge. I don't know. But that could be you. You could be really good at this. And that can be your thing. And I've seen women save all kinds of money. I mean, I have tried couponing and some other options. But anyways, for whatever reason, I set my budget and I meal plan and I take my list with me and I grocery shop. And every month I'm like, man, and maybe it's just because we have 5 kids now. It just is a lot and we have a ton of teenagers, but I don't know what I can blame for the last 10 years before that. So anyways, that could be something. If you're really wanting to be home with your baby, would you consider moving? And I know that sounds like this big crazy thing in this moment, but we had even looked into that. It's like, okay, if I, really want to be home and this isn't working right now, and we have all seen the cost of groceries and everything else go up, let's be realistic. Would I be willing to go into a smaller place or a different location or something like that? And I'm not saying you need to do any of these things, but this is something to consider. Memberships. You might want to get rid of memberships. That might include gym memberships or TV memberships or, all the little things like when we stare at our budget, are there things that we can knock away at that we don't need that are unnecessary? Would it really help and get us to where we want to be? Get really good at meal planning and grocery shopping, like I said, and set out a budget and set out to create a budget and stick to it. Now, I might be not great at the grocery budget, but if we set the rest of the budget, I seem to be able to be a lot better at that. And that's just a matter of looking at your finances over the space of 2 or 3 months and really paying attention to every single thing that you purchase and putting it in a category so that you can say, okay, we spend this much on our home stuff and this much on our bills and this much on our groceries and this much on clothing and this much on beauty supplies. And where can I cut down? Where's the waste so that we can get rid of that? And I think that's a good practice for anybody anyways. But I will tell you the tool that I use that I really love is totally free, not sponsored in any way. It's everydollar.com. So that's Dave Ramsey's online version of telling all of your dollars and pennies exactly where you need them to go. So if you have any leftovers at the end, it doesn't just sit there in a pile. You say that's either going to savings or we're going to add some of that for the clothing next month or whatever the case. But everydollar.com is what I use and I love it. So that is an option for you. And then this is obvious, but I'm going to say it anyways. And that is you can always make more money, but you can't make more time. So if you are the mom that is like, I don't want to be working, I have to right now, and that's okay, but I would rather be at home with my baby. I think when we put our priorities in order, it helps us to realize what we need to focus on and what we need to focus on now. And I will tell you, even as I am watching my kids grow, I mean, my husband and I went out to dinner the other night. We have a standing date night every week. And I was bawling at the table. He's like, you have to stop. People are going to think I'm breaking up with you or something. But I had this moment of we have a couple more years and our kids are a little bit older now, but we have a couple more years and our oldest son will for sure, likely be on a church mission in a couple of years. And that's a great, wonderful thing. And of course, we're going to support that. And of course, I'm excited for that, for him and for us. And when he does, when he leaves, I'm going to get choked up about it now. Our home, this family that I have right now, will never be the same. All of my kids in one space under my roof, and I'm the mom and they're just the kids, will never be the same. And as we are getting closer, I am closer to that now than I am to when they were born. It is surreal. And that is my hope that I can share with other moms, share with you. It is so cliche, but it is so true that they are gone in the blink of an eye. And I'm not even there yet. I am not even there yet, but I can see it on the horizon. And it is so sad and so awesome all at the same time. I have 100% mix of emotions, all the ways that you were proud of them and want good for them and all that stuff. But it happens so fast and I don't want to miss it. That is my biggest thing. And I am so grateful for what I get to do today. I am grateful to be here to podcast with all of you. I am grateful for the birth course online. I am grateful for all the ways that I have been able to be more at home and present with my children. I'm grateful for homeschooling, all of those things, for a husband that supports me. But it is true that it is fleeting, and you move on to the next stage faster than you're ready for. And then it's every stage, a little piece of you and of them dies. It's a new phase. That part of life is dead in a way, and we get to move on to the next. And so it's this constant rebirth of things, but it's a lot, and it happens really quick. And so if you are here and you are listening and you want to be home with those babies, there are ways to make that happen. And I really want to encourage you to do that you will never regret that. It's the same things I talk about with birth, all the time that you spend planning to be prepared for birth and all the people that you interview and all the thing, all the pushback that you're dealing with. You'll never regret it. You never will. And it's the same with those babies. If you want to be home with them, you will not regret doing what you have to do to be home with them. And it is okay to be the mom that wants to go to work. I do not in any way want to make anybody feel bad, because you shouldn't. This is your life and your family, and you get to choose those things. In fact, I remember I've had several times where when I have talked with moms postpartum, for example, when I have had moms who have been my birth students and they go and they have their babies and they head back to work, some because they need to, some because they want to, and they come back, and almost always those moms tend to be less postpartum. They tend to be in a better mental space. And I always wondered, and we kind of talked about it in some of these classes, because they interact with other adults, because it is forcing them to get up and get dressed and get out of the house every day. There are some things that are really positive about going back to work. And so if that is your desire and your passion, or maybe, you're going to school to do whatever, and that's just part of it, then that's great. There's totally a place for that too. And children come along for the ride, and it's great. So I wanted to leave that with you here and just let you know that I support you, whatever you choose to do and wherever you're at, as we all should support each other. Now, there are different types of childcare, and I thought this was great because maybe we don't think of all the options. Family and friends are probably, if we were to start from the beginning to the end here, let's start at the top and say that it's family and friends, if that is an option for you. You could be a military spouse and all over the world, and that's just never going to be an option. But if you do have family and friends nearby, is that something that you could work out? Mom or mother-in-law or sisters or whatever, siblings. Maybe that's an option for you. Swapping, I did that a lot. And I did that a lot because we even lived with my in-laws. They were a bit older. My husband was going to school. He's working full-time, going to school full-time, or working part-time, going to school. No, he's working full-time, going to school full-time. We did not see him for years. It was rough. And I was like, I need a little bit of a break. And I can't always throw that on the in-laws, especially when they live with you, because then it just feels like it's that much heavier. And so I did a lot of swapping with friends. And until they were old enough and I could leave them for little spurts at a time. But and especially with doula work and stuff, that was awesome. It's I found other doulas in the community. We had similar aged kids. We were all passionate about birth. And so our kids were able to play together. They got along really well. And then when it was time to go to births, we would just go to each other's homes. No big deal. And it was definitely, I shouldn't say no big deal. It was definitely there might be a mom at my house at 4 a.m., or something like that, but you make it work. So there are definitely swapping can be a thing. And then there's the paid childcare from someone that you might not know. It could be somebody that you know, and then it could be somebody that you've never met before. And so with that, let's kind of dive into some of the questions that you might want to ask when you are looking at somebody that you don't personally know. In fact, let's start with like a daycare center. So, and this can be a really convenient option for moms, right? And it ends up being potentially a little bit less because there are more children there. And so they don't need to charge those individual rates. And so it might be a little bit more affordable for moms. So here's some of the questions. And the majority of these were brought up within the Facebook group from other moms who have researched for themselves and found providers that they are happy having their children with. So some of those questions were, what is your teacher to child ratio? So how many teachers for how many children, and what ages are they split into? Are they all mingled together? Are they like they have the infants and the 2 and 3 year olds and how are they split up and what does that look like? What's your sick policy? So if you're like on, we pay this much a month and they expect to see your child, that much a month. What happens if I'm sick? What happens if baby's sick? And what happens if that baby is sick? Like, are they able to go as well, or do they need to stay home? So asking that is a good one. What's your day structured like? Do they have nap times? Do they have different feeding times? Do they have playtime or free time? What does that look like? Do you have cameras and can they be viewed live? So if it's a daycare center, is this something that while you're working, wherever you're working, that you can go online and check the cameras and say, hey, there he is, or there she is, and they're doing great and perfect. That's just awesome. You can also look on your state's registry and see how many incidents this location may have had, and you can look at their ratings. So you can go online and even just Google reviews or whatever, but you want to go and check the ratings on the state's registry as well and look at them and decide, is this somewhere I want my little one? Obviously, just like anything else when we're looking for providers, if you can find other people in your area that have their children at daycares and know the people that work there, then that gives you a way better in to say, yes, I think this might be good, or I'd like to interview here or not. Are the teachers CPR certified? In fact, that's even when my girls babysit, that's a question that comes up. So are they CPR certified? How do they handle any discipline? I think that's a really great question to ask because, discipline can be handled many different ways. And it's not that children don't occasionally need it to be kind of like, hey, this is not okay. Let's try this instead. But what does that look like for that facility? And can I get a list of references? Because if you can get references and you can call and ask specific questions to other people that are not part of the facility, then that'll give you a good idea of that as well. You want to ask any fees that they have. Is it a monthly fee? Do they charge by the hour? Is it drop off? What are the hours? How long do they expect your kid to be there? All of that stuff. If your child's old enough for solid food, are you allowed to bring your own? Does it have to be whatever is there? If there's allergies involved, you'll need to ask about that. It's kind of like how will you keep my child safe and fed and all of that. So make sure that you ask that. And then are there any special trainings or certifications that the daycare center has that they require their staff to have? And along with that, kind of like, what's the turnover? How often do you guys get new people? Is this, has this lady been here a certain amount of time or whoever, and are they going to be, with my baby or my child every week? Is it going to be the same person? Because children really do well with consistency if that's something you're concerned about. So that could be a question that you ask as well. Now, for your in-home providers or nannies, and this could be your home or theirs. So if you're hiring somebody to come into your home or you're taking your child to somebody else's home, there's a lot of those questions kind of stay the same. So if you're taking it to their home, right? What's the teacher to child ratio? Like, how many kids do you have in your home? Are you going to have another person here babysitting with you? Is it just you? Sick policy, same kind of thing. And what happens when she gets sick, or, if that teacher is sick and you're planning on bringing your baby to her home, like, what do you have to do then? And what happens when your baby's sick? What is your day structured like? Same kind of thing. Are there naps, feedings? If you're caring for other children, are their children there if they have any? If you're hiring a nanny and you want them to drive your child somewhere or be at certain places at certain times, like, are they willing to do that? Is that even an option? And then you want to check their driving record and insurance, ask about those things. It'd be the same, like, are you CPR certified? How will you handle tantrums and discipline? What if my kid doesn't want to go down for a nap? These are all kind of like the same things, right? And then meal times, that's another one, is like if it's in your home, maybe you've got stuff prepped and ready to go, or you have a list of this is what they can have and this is what they need to make for them. And here's the times that they eat. And if it's in their home, it's like, when are your meal times? And do I bring food or do you supply that? Allergies again. And if you have indoor cameras, if you personally are having them watch your baby in your home and you have cameras in your house, are they comfortable with you having those on? Which they should be. There's really no reason for them to not be, but allowing them to answer that question, I think, is really important. And then same on the other one. Like, do you as a nanny, if I bring my baby to your home, do you have cameras in your home? Is it something that I can view online? Again, you're going to ask for references. Again, you're going to work out the fees and all that kind of stuff. So I buzzed over the questions kind of quick. You can pause and go back and write them down, or you can grab the PDF, which has all of those questions and more on it. So you'll go to myessentialbirth.com and you will click on podcast. You'll find this week's episode, scroll all the way to the bottom, and that is where we have the links for the show notes. Again, if you are an email subscriber, if you're already on our list, then we will send that directly to you this week. So no worries there. Kind of just to wrap it all up, I want to tell you guys that I know how stressful this can be. And I also know how awesome it can be. Having babies is wonderful. And then they get older and life gets going and things are expensive, and it's okay. Like, it's okay that we need to utilize some of these things, and it's okay to work with ourselves to figure out what is going to be best. But I want you guys to know that you are great parents. You are a good mom right where you're at. The fact that we worry so much about these things is what tells us that we are kind of doing the right thing, that we care enough that we want to make sure that we've got our babies in good hands. So that's a wonderful thing. I think it's a big decision, but you are your baby's mom. And just like we talk about with birth, intuition, and we do all of those things that give us all the good information, we go out and get those questions answered, and we work with providers. It's all the same thing. Like, you are trained up, you know exactly what to do, and now you're going to do it with your baby. So you're prepared, you're ready, and you know exactly what needs to happen. So I hope this episode and those questions prepare you perfectly to be able to do that and find wonderful care providers for your baby. And if you guys have any questions, you know where to find me. So until next week, I hope you guys enjoy this episode, and I will see you then.
If you loved what you heard today, the very best way to support this podcast and help other moms to find it is to leave a quick review. I read one at the beginning of the episodes, and I would love for yours to be next. And if you're ready for even more pregnancy, birth, and postpartum goodness, come join me in the My Essential Birth course at myessentialbirth.com, where I will hold your hand and walk you through pregnancy and birth step by step, so you're totally prepared for a birth you'll love. See you next week.